Striking that the king of the most misogynistic humor ever now turns into a breathless over a progressive, hopelessly shallow candidate. But maybe that's the explanation.
When I watch them on Saturday Night Live with the where they have Maya Rudolph playing you, I hate it. I don't want you being made fun of.
Oh my God.
There's too much at stake. I believe the entire future of this country right now, I mean, as America, land of the free, home of the brave, I think it's literally on the line.
So a guy who's supposed to be funny.
I always hate that argument, like, what happened to the old Stern, or what people have changed. That's not what this is about. It's a weird disconnect.
Well, he hasn't changed.
No.
People have been calling him insane for 40 years.
Yeah,
that just used to be, this guy's nuts. And now they're like, oh, we're worried about Howard.
When it comes to the world of media giants, few names hold as much weight or controversy as Howard Stern and Greg Gutfeld. But when these two titans collided in a now viral takedown, something seismic shifted in the public conversation. Gutfeld, the current king of Fox's late-night edge, took aim at the legendary Stern, exposing what many longtime fans have felt for years, but never said aloud. The former rebel has become the very thing he used to mock. This wasn't just a jab, it was a cultural reckoning. And it didn't come in the form of rage or insults, it came in silence. Stern's silence. Today, we dive into the clash that had viewers stunned, social media ablaze, and legacies questioned. Was this the moment Stern's crown officially slipped, or was it a masterclass in calculated criticism from Gutfeld? Let's break down how one brutal exchange reshaped the image of an icon.
I always hate that argument, like, what happened to the old Stern, or what people have changed. That's not what this is about. It's a weird disconnect.
Well, he hasn't changed.
No.
People have been calling him insane for 40 years.
Yeah,
that just used to be, this guy's nuts. And now they're like, oh, we're worried about Howard. He needs help. But I'll tell you, though, I'm a little sympathetic because what you said is correct, but I'm also a germaphobe.
Yeah.
And, I just have a smaller apartment.
Yes.
So it's like
Greg Gutfeld didn't just criticize Howard Stern, he exposed a transformation that has been unfolding in plain sight. Once known for his fearless, boundary-breaking commentary, Stern now seems more like a polished host clinging to his A-list connections than a rebel. Gutfeld's takedown centered on how the man who once shattered taboos has become timid and safe, favoring celebrity dinners over shock radio. His humor is softer, his interviews friendlier, and his opinions safer. This change, according to Gutfeld, is less about growth and more about selling out. The criticism wasn't shouted or ranted, it was carefully delivered and deeply cutting. And the real stinger? Stern didn't even notice it coming. Gutfeld painted a picture of a former revolutionary who's now a lapdog to Hollywood elites. The once proud outsider now seems desperate for insider approval. For fans who grew up with raw, unfiltered Stern, the evolution feels like a betrayal.
This definition of woke, it's if you call someone a know-it-all, you're not complimenting them on the breadth of their knowledge. Yeah. You're saying you don't know as much as you think you know. So, yeah, woke doesn't have anything to do with vaccines. What it really means is sort of a slavish devotion to left-wing ideology and then repeating it so you can get social credit.
Right.
That's really what it means.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that you're smarter than anybody. And he had said in another part of this that, because I believe in the science. Well, if you believed in the science, you wouldn't be hiding out like Howard Hughes in your mansion. Yeah. So
the moment that kicked things off was as ridiculous as it was revealing. Stern, in what he thought was a playful remark, said he'd vote for Kamala Harris, or even for the wall behind her. It was meant to be funny, but Gutfeld turned it into a hammer. By equating Harris with a wall, Stern inadvertently suggested she was as useful, or as dense, as a brick barrier. Gutfeld used that comment to underscore just how far Stern had fallen. The guy who once torched political correctness was now fumbling compliments like a confused uncle at Thanksgiving dinner. And worse, Stern didn't even realize he was being laughed at. Gutfeld's breakdown turned the awkward moment into a metaphor. Stern, once a firebrand, had become completely tone-deaf. That single quote embodied the larger issue. Stern has lost the edge that once made him untouchable. Now, he's just another celebrity trying to sound clever and falling flat.
It is incredibly brave to take this stance after you've made $300, $400 million not being woke, right? Loving Donald Trump, exploiting the mentally ill, wearing blackface. Look at the crop of woke comics, whether it's Stern or Jimmy Kimmel, his BFF, Sarah Silverman, Joy Behar, Michael Ian Black. What do they all have in common? They wore blackface. And then they went woke. It's not a chicken or egg thing there. You know what order it came. So I call this BFR. It's blackface reparations. There's nothing in Stern's previous career that could withstand this modern witch hunt that he now embraces. So this is a form of restitution. Maybe he says, you know, if I'm woke too, the crocodile will eat me last. But they always do eat. But I get it. He flipped from populist to elitist because now he's with elitists.
In a scathing critique drenched in sarcasm, Gutfeld mocked Stern's complaints about the exhaustion of celebrity life. Stern had reportedly described dining with Hollywood friends as exhausting, a claim that landed awkwardly in a world still recovering from a pandemic. Gutfeld hammered the point home by painting a hilarious picture: poor Howard, trekking from the wine cellar to the tennis court in his $20 million mansion. While average Americans were struggling, Stern's complaints felt not just out of touch, but laughably elitist. Once the voice of the working man, Stern now seems like a caricature of privilege. Gutfeld's mocking tone wasn't just for laughs. It was strategic. He held up Stern's luxury lifestyle as proof that the shock jock had not just mellowed, but completely disconnected from his roots. The rebel who once skewered the elite had become their brunch buddy, and Gutfeld made sure the whole world saw the irony.
And I watched them on Saturday Night Live with the where they have Maya Rudolph playing you. Mm-hmm. I hate it. I don't want you being made fun of.
Mm-hmm. Oh my God.
There's too much at stake. I believe the entire future of this country right now. I mean, as America, land of the free, home of the brave, I think it's literally on the line.
So a guy who's supposed to be funny for a living now claims her candidacy is too important to joke about. This is a guy who once joked right after the Columbine massacre that the killers should have raped the students before killing them. Not that I like that Stern, but this pendulum swing from saying the most tasteless thing in the universe to putting your balls in a Tic Tac container. You gotta wonder what's going on here. It's striking that the king of the most misogynistic humor ever now turns into a breathless over a progressive, hopelessly shallow candidate.
Gutfeld didn't stop at lifestyle critiques. He went straight for Stern's legacy. He pointed out a glaring contradiction. Stern, now one of Hollywood's woke cheerleaders, built his empire on some of the most offensive material imaginable. Blackface skits, mocking the mentally ill, and tasteless jokes were once his bread and butter. Now, he champions the very causes that would cancel old Stern in seconds. Gutfeld called it what it is: performative penance. He even coined it blackface reparations, suggesting that Stern is overcompensating for his past sins by becoming an overly apologetic woke warrior. It's not that people can't change, Gutfeld argued. It's the way Stern changed. This wasn't growth. It was survival. Self-preservation wrapped in social justice. And when you build a brand on unapologetic authenticity, selling that authenticity for applause feels like the ultimate sellout. Gutfeld didn't attack Stern's past. He used it as a mirror to expose the hypocrisy of the present.
Holed up in his house that long, it explains a lot of things, like how you forget how other people live, especially in hard times like a pandemic. For the longest time, 2 years in fact, the same time Stern's been AWOL, I wondered where he went. Not physically, but mentally. I bet you did too. Remember his screeds about COVID? They were epic and angry, and not to mention wrong.
When are we going to stop putting up with the idiots in this country and just say, it's mandatory to get vaccinated? Fuck them, fuck their freedom. I want my freedom.
Howard Stern wasn't always part of the club. In fact, he made his name by crashing it. But according to Gutfeld, that's no longer the case. Today, Stern is seen hobnobbing with the likes of Jimmy Kimmel, Jennifer Aniston, and other Hollywood elites. His rebellious identity has been replaced with the polished sheen of a safe, sanitized celebrity host. Gutfeld argued that Stern didn't just lose his edge. He gave it away in exchange for validation from the very institutions he once mocked. The rebel became the elite, the outsider became the establishment. It's not just that Stern changed, it's that he changed to fit into a world he once dismantled with joy. Gutfeld's critique hit hard because it pointed out what fans already sensed. The dangerous voice of radio had become a dull echo of Hollywood. In a world that celebrates rebellion, Stern's new comfort zone feels like a cage.
Happy Friday, America! Oh man, tonight is a special night. It's Feminine Friday, where all the panelists are women. Tonight we have Kennedy. Yeah! David McDowell. Kat Tim. And Janine Garofalo. All right.
What made Gutfeld's criticism so effective wasn't anger. It was precision. Like a surgeon with a scalpel, he cut through the layers of Stern's current persona to reveal the hollow core underneath. He didn't yell. He didn't insult. He simply compared the Howard Stern of old, wild-haired, unapologetic, unfiltered, with the new, cautious version. Gutfeld framed the transformation not as evolution, but erosion. The edge was gone, the danger removed, and most damaging of all, Stern didn't respond. That silence spoke volumes. For someone who once made a career out of eviscerating opponents on air, the lack of any comeback made it feel like Gutfeld had hit a nerve too deep to ignore. It wasn't a feud, it was a demolition. Stern's legacy was dissected live, and the world watched as one of media's boldest figures was quietly unmasked by someone with nothing to lose and everything to gain.
You should hear what keeps him up at night.
This is what keeps me up at night. I don't understand how my fellow Americans, I don't even understand how this election is close. And yes, I'm voting for you, but I would also vote for that wall over there.
Well, he's half right. We do need a wall. To keep out gang members, fentanyl dealers, human traffickers, and Anna Navarro. What's funny, though, is that Stern actually thought that was a compliment. Stern has become such a wussified sycophant, he doesn't realize that telling Kamala that he'd vote for a wall is telling her that he knows she's as dumb as one.
In an industry built on reaction, Howard Stern's silence was deafening. Once known for lightning-fast comebacks and brutal takedowns, he offered no rebuttal to Gutfeld's searing critique. Not even a tweet. It wasn't just a missed opportunity, it was a signal. Whether intentional or not, Stern's silence read like quiet agreement. Fans noticed, critics noticed, the internet noticed. It wasn't just about losing an argument, it was about losing the fire. Gutfeld landed the punch, and Stern didn't flinch. Not out of confidence, but confusion. That moment marked a symbolic passing of the torch. The man who once dominated controversy now seemed unable or unwilling to engage with it. And in a world where public perception is everything, Stern's failure to respond gave Gutfeld an edge that couldn't be faked. He didn't need to say he'd won. The silence said it for him. And fans started asking the hardest question. Had Stern finally run out of steam?
I will say this, Dagan. I thank God for Howard Stern because he does make me feel normal by comparison. Because I'm like the Fox recluse. I don't do anything. I don't go anywhere. But he makes me look like, Pete Davidson on a...
Yeah, he's a germaphobe. Like, his wife rescues cats. That's her job, apparently, her thing. But you can get toxoplasmosis.
That's true.
Cryptosporidiosis.
AIDS.
And
no, you can't.
No,
but
you can't get.
No, you can't.
But you can get.
I mean, what are the chances I get that again?
The public didn't just watch this feud, they devoured it. Gutfeld's remarks went viral almost instantly, sparking debates, memes, and endless comment threads. What shocked many was how much agreement came from Stern's own fans. People who once idolized him were now acknowledging what they'd felt for years. Stern had lost his spark. Gutfeld didn't just mock him. He voiced a cultural frustration. The man who once ridiculed phoniness had become part of the performance, and that realization hit like a wave. The shift wasn't about politics. It was about authenticity. And in a media landscape hungry for real voices, Gutfeld came off as the more genuine figure. The fallout from the segment wasn't just a temporary buzz. It sparked a deeper question. Can icons stay relevant without becoming parodies of themselves? In the eyes of many, Stern had crossed that line. And now, it wasn't just Gutfeld calling him out. It was everyone else too.
Stern got even more pathetic, wondering how she doesn't nap.
When you said you don't nap, I get it, because like what you've taken on is extraordinarily difficult. And I mean, do you feel the pressure of the moment in the sense that, like, when I met you out in the hall, I said, I'm really nervous because I want this to go well for you. I want it to go well for the country.
Hold on. I need a minute.
This clash symbolized more than a personal feud. It represented a broader shift in media culture. Stern, a product of 90s rebellion, had become a relic in the age of viral truth bombs and digital satire. Gutfeld, with his quick wit and unapologetic style, embodies the new wave, sharp, sarcastic, and ready to challenge the sacred. The difference? Gutfeld still sounds dangerous. Stern doesn't. The old-school shock jock has been replaced by the new-school internet jester. But this jester has power, reach, and edge. In many ways, the Gutfeld-Stern moment was the changing of the guard, a public reminder that in today's media, staying relevant requires more than fame. It requires fire. And Stern, for all his history, now seems like a candle slowly burning out. Gutfeld didn't just take a shot, he exposed a crack in the media hierarchy, one where old legends fade quietly and new voices rise through noise and nerve.
Striking that the king of the most misogynistic humor ever now turns into a breathless over a progressive, hopelessly shallow candidate. But maybe that's the explanation. This is Stern's self-imposed penance for subjugating women to demoralizing stunts, capitalizing on desperate females thirsting for attention, even if it's from an oily paddle striking their bare asses.
What happens when the king is challenged by the court jester and the court jester wins? That's exactly what played out when Greg Gutfeld confronted Howard Stern. It wasn't just a roast. It was a reckoning. Gutfeld wasn't criticizing who Stern was. He was questioning what Stern had become. And that difference matters. Stern's silence, his elite lifestyle, and his sudden obsession with pleasing Hollywood, these were not marks of evolution. They were signs of surrender. Gutfeld argued that Stern's change wasn't ideological, but strategic, a shift to maintain comfort, not character. And that landed harder than any insult could. The exchange marked more than a shift in careers, it symbolized a shift in values. Stern once stood for fearless speech. Now, he avoids it. In that contrast, Gutfeld didn't just win a media moment, he defined a new standard. In an era that worships authenticity, the rebel without a roar has finally been replaced. The battle between Howard Stern and Greg Gutfeld wasn't loud or long, but it was powerful. It peeled back the curtain on a larger truth. Legacy doesn't protect you from relevance. Stern, the icon who once thrived on chaos, now appears to be avoiding it. Gutfeld, the newcomer with a scalpel for satire, stepped in and exposed what many were too afraid to say. Stern's fire has faded, and while fans may still love him for what he was, the world has moved on. What remains is the question every public figure must eventually face. Is it better to change or to stay true? And if you do change, what's the cost? For Howard Stern, that cost may be his reputation as media's untouchable rebel. For Greg Gutfeld, it might just be the moment he proved he's not just funny, he's fearless. And in today's media war, that may be all that matters.